All right. All right, Arjun. Arjun, welcome to day 18. We have other folks who are joining in bit late, so we'll get started.
Yes,
Okay.
carry.
One small correction from the last class. Remember, we try to add an item to make a fetch call and then make another fetch call to add a new product into the database. So we
Right.
made an API call and then we made an API call.
Mm.
But one thing we forgot to do is that we are trying to hardcode the ID 30. We missed to do that the last time. So I'm gonna go ahead and fix that thing little in here because this 30 number should be coming from the
From the
API, right?
right.
I'm gonna fix that right in here. So yep, instead of previously generating the value, I would just generate it in here. And then here. Okay. And then that instead of product count ID, I would just replace that with a product count. And let me give it a start. And replace the default component that is rendering from Abdo. And we'll just replace the existing app.js component that is defaultly rendering the add product. So I would just replace this guy with app.js with the add product, and I should go to the app.product directly. So cannot read the property value of undefined handle name change. So let's see what's going on in there. Handle name change, add product. Okay, handle name change. And it looks like we are trying to call this. So I'll just get rid of this one. I gave you an assignment. How do you use the same exact function every single time? But you try to answer that in the previous class, so that should be good. And then I will just remove the other stuff. I'll try to. So I have dummy data in here. So I'll go ahead and add the dummy data and give it a refresh, and then go back to my index.js and put back the app localhost. And that should get me the strawberry in here, which we just added. Okay, now Arjun will try to separate little things out. Okay, so I want to add a header on top of this. I just needed to add an header on top of this. So for example, something like this. So this is the header you see, right? The one on the
Sticky
top, the
header, yeah.
and the card. So this header is always on the top. So, and I wanted to add something like this. So I'll do a little a component that I can pull into my code base, and then I can start adding that into my app.js. So let's see where I can add this. So if I go back, and if I try to locate, this is my first product, and this product is coming from products.js. So if I go to products, I'm sorry, this is coming from app.js. So anything I do in app.js, the render function should show up in here. So this is hello. So my header should be somewhere here, right? So I give that, and you should be able to see the header in here. So I'll go ahead, create a component called header, and then reuse the same component back in here. So I'll be using, probably I would use it in a common component because this component gonna be common across multiple screens. So I would create a component called header.js. Okay, and same thing, import React from React. Okay, and then I already made a component, and I'm just copy pasting because this is the same exact thing we did, the same way we did the other components. We would extend the class component and all that stuff. Okay, and then I would just copy this guy in here, and I would also need an image because if you take a look in here, there's a little cart image in here. So I would also get this image. So I'm just going to create another folder right in here.
You have a icon, yeah, the Bootstrap icons or like icons.
I'm sorry.
You can also use icons, right? Instead of
Oh
image.
yeah, absolutely. You can also use Bootstrap icons, inbuilt icons. This is like a custom image that I'm using in here for this application, but you can use any icon that you don't really need. So I'm gonna create another folder called, few people say this assets because images or videos, images, GIFs, everything that it's part of the images. So let's be more specific in here. Let's say images. And inside the images, I already created an image and I'm just gonna drag it and drop it in here. So that is the logo that I'm gonna use it right now. Okay. And if you go to the header folder, I'm gonna remove this span for now. And get rid of this stuff. We'll come back to this point later. And then if I give it a refresh and then import this component into the app.js, okay, import this component in here. So if I go start typing it, it should ask me to import it, which is not. So I would go import it, the component header and header. Okay. And then use the component as it is. So how do I use a React component inside another component? Left angular brace, capital K letters, header, and this is a shorthand notation. You can either do this, or instead of this, you can simply do this. You can either use a header and then a closing tag, or this is called a self-closing tag. It is not just specific to React, but you can, if you're trying to close and open on the same tag, you can use a self-closing tag. And I give it a refresh. Okay, and you can see that my things are showing up. Now I would go ahead and add a little styles to my header. Go to styles, create new file. I would say header dot css, and the same thing I have always have my styles in place, so I'll just copy over my styles. Okay, and then import the styles into my header component.
Right.
Did I say header or headers on the styles? Header.css. There you go. So this is my little card product, and you can see that I'm able to header. But let's give it an inspect. The reason we had a header in here because I want to show you why we need a container in particularly. So let's go and do an inspect and see what is the hierarchy of the React components. If I go to React and the components, and you should see something very interesting. You say header
inside the product.
Yeah, inside the products, right? So I want to separate the products and the header. I don't want everything should be as part of a single thing, because the entire products component should hold all the products. Anything not belonging to header should be not part of products. So what I do is I create a container. Now this is where it gets really interesting. A container is nothing but a component that holds other similar components. Okay, other similar components, exactly. Like all my single product is all are similar products. So what I would do is I would create a component that would hold all of these components. So I would go create another folder. Until this point, we never had containers in my application. So I would create another folder called containers, because it contains the other components, containers. And I would create a file called products, because this is the container. Remember, I'm not using product. This is products. To be more specific, I can give a hyphen and a container, but that's not absolutely needed. I would just say products.js, and I would use this products.js in a place where I would need all the products. So if I go to app.js in here, I have to use the products right in here. Right, I have to use the products right in here, and I have to remove this guy.
Remove part.
Yeah, because the product sections should be part of the products. So
Okay.
I copy the entire thing and go to products, paste it back in here, but replace the products. Everything looks good, but you would not need header in here because header is already been rendered. So I would remove the header part. Okay, and I would have all the products in the product section and take this guy out. Okay, and then go to app.js and give it a save. Does it have anything in the products.js? Inspect. Which is from products.components, containers.products, and give it a refresh. I would also need the header. The header is coming from the common components. Okay, and let's see what's, okay, so it says the common component does not have a header. Is that the case? Are we not exporting it? Are we exporting it? Yes. Go to app.js.
Products are there. Check once in products.
Can't resolve common header in source contain. Oh, the products.js. What's wrong with the products.js? Oh, I might not need this in here because I'm not rendering the components. Can't resolve the products because I have moved the products from the component to the container, so I have to redo that again. Can't resolve products because component reference have been changed. And now take a look at what happens to our inspect components and see how nicely you would have an app.js, which is your root component. And inside the root component, you have a container. A header is all by itself. It's a common component. But you have a second container. A container is holding all the product components. Sounds good, Arjun? This is how you encapsulate things that are very similar into a container. A container is nothing but that holds the other components.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to another topic. And this is really, a core part of React.js. The reason why React is so famous and why React has been adopted by a lot of, adopted by companies and I would say the popularity behind React. And this, you might have heard this term called VDOM,
Virtual DOM.
the virtual DOM concept. So if you go to the whole idea of being React is so popular is called a virtual DOM. If you remember the first classes we started, it's called a DOM manipulation. Anything on a web page that you need to change, you have to change the DOM. And if I just let's take an example in here. Whenever I click an add button in here, see what happens. That my DOM on the browser is being changed. So take a look again. As soon as I hit the add button, there are a few things that have been changing. A lightish pink color is the change. So as soon as I click add on in here, you see things have been changed, and that is called a DOM manipulation.
Right.
Every framework in the world right now on the web development is trying to achieve the most efficient way of manipulating the DOM, and React is no different. Angular is trying to do in a different way, React is doing in a different way, Ember, Vue.js, they're all trying to solve the same problem, manipulating the DOM the quickest amount and the most efficient way of doing it. And React does that using a concept called virtual DOM. So what's a virtual DOM? Let's take a very simple example. Now, if I have a simple div, okay, so this is something, a div that I'm talking about. I have a h1 tag. Let's say hello. And world. Let's do this as a h2 tag. Now, this is how the DOM is represented on a browser, right? This is a simple HTML. Now what a React does is it will create a JavaScript object based on this view. So it will be something like this, a template, and I'm writing a pseudocode in here, nothing fancy. I would say element, which is div, and does it have any children? Yes, it does have any. It does have children, and the children are array. And inside an array, you would have each object, and each object would have related to the h1. And does it have any children?
That's true.
Right, it has a children. It doesn't have any children because h1 doesn't have any children. So that's an empty tag. Does it have any text on it, text content?
No, empty.
Hello is the text content, right?
Okay.
Okay, and then you would have a similar object, but except that you would have a h2 and a world in here. Now this is how React would represent the HTML, the DOM in a JavaScript world. Okay, now whenever a change is made, React will not update this DOM directly. For example, I'm trying to update from h1 tag, contents of the h1 tag from hello to let's hello to
Welcome.
let's hello React. Okay, I'm trying to make this simple change. Now what Angular or jQuery or other frameworks try to do is that they directly manipulate this. They'll just go ahead and directly manipulate the DOM. But instead, React takes a different route. It takes something called a VDOM route. What does it do is, it will try to create, it already has created an object based on the view. It would create another object based on the change. Now, what is the change between this guy? This is the current state. This is the current state, and this is the state, the future state, or the state that we asked the React to go ahead and change. In this case, my h1 tag is not hello world, hello React. Now, what behind the scenes React does is, it uses something called diffing algorithm. And a concept called reconciliation. I'm bad at my spellings, but you get the idea. So behind the scenes, React would first compare its existing state with the future state, and then see what is the change. So if you see the current state versus your future state, the only difference is that it has to change the text content of one particular node, and the React would find it more. It will try to do a lot of permutations and combinations to understand what is the best way in order to reach to this node. And then when it's try to reach that node, it will try to apply the diffing algorithm and see what is the difference. Once it finds the difference, it will try to patch the difference to your DOM element. Okay, it will only patch the difference. It does not re-render the whole thing, but it will only patch the difference. And this is an asynchronous operation. The changes are not immediately effective because it has to go through reconciliation. It has to go through a diffing algorithm in order to understand what are the changes. Once it knows what are those changes, and then it will only start applying those changes one by one. So if you have thousands of these items, it will not apply those changes all at once. It will start applying changes one change at a time. And this is very important in the UI because you need to have your UI up to date with the data you provided. Somebody is trying to change this, and at the same time, somebody else is trying to change this. For example, in a typical jQuery word, you try to get this element, try changing it, and then you try changing it. But if you try changing it and trying to grab this element, you would have an inconsistency of the data. But that problem is being resolved by unidirectional data flow of React using a VDOM. This is like the 9 interviewers out of 10 interviewers would ask this question: what is a VDOM? If I were you, I would tell them something like this: a VDOM is nothing but is an exact copy of real DOM, but in JavaScript. When React detects a change, the change is applied to the VDOM, which is a JavaScript object, and then it will find the most efficient way to apply the change and only patches the difference to the real DOM. I'll say that again. When React detects a change, the VDOM is nothing but its exact copy of real DOM, which is this guy. It's an exact copy of VDOM. It's an exact copy of real DOM, but in JavaScript. When React detects a change, the change is applied to the VDOM first, in this case, and we'll try to, and React uses a diffing algorithm to find the most efficient way to apply the change to the real DOM. As simple as that. Any questions here?
Yeah, clear.
Abdul?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But one question, bro. Here, to identify the difference, it undergoes multiple combinations, right? So how is it still faster? And
Exactly.
in like unlike a traditional JavaScript project where you just directly call that particular unique ID or class and will simply change the
Awesome.
text.
Awesome, Arjun. Awesome, Arjun. Guys, now a lot of interviewers try to ask you, put this into, will put you into the same situation. Throughout this lecture, I never said this is faster.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and this is a common myth across all the React developers and also the interviewers who believe that trying to change the directly the thing would always be the faster. Going through a React route is not, you're taking a different route, then it's definitely going to be slower because you're trying to make the changes, you're trying to compare the changes and then apply the changes instead of applying the changes directly. The founder, the founder by himself, the creator of the React himself, let me show you. Okay, myth: React is faster than DOM. It's not, and guys, I have, it really depends on an interviewer. A lot of times I try to explain them React is not faster. It's just another way of changing but few people try to make it as a discussion and try to convince me that now that is the reason React is being widely adopted into the market. But behind the scenes, it is not. This is coming from the founder, the creator of the React. He says React is faster than DOM. React, it helps create maintainable applications, and is it fast enough for most use cases? But it's not faster. It's not faster. It's a common sense. You're trying to change something directly, should be faster than changing something else, and then that thing handle changing the other things would definitely slow down your application or definitely slow down your process. Okay, make sure if you're in a situation where interviewer try to convince you, or the first thing I would say is that React is faster, then he would ask me that what makes React is fast. Then I would say This is a common myth in the market in the React world, in every React developers. But to be concise, React is not faster. It takes a different route to maintain the state. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Arjun, for bringing this up. Any questions on the VDOM? Because you know what, if you are into a React interview, if you are being interviewed for a React developer, 9 out of 10 interviewers would definitely ask you this question. And the more details you give out in explaining the VDOM, the more you help yourself getting the job. Okay. Now, if you constantly look at the application, folks, there's been a constant error that okay, if from the beginning of this application, when we started using the products, there have been a constant error on our console log. I'm talking about this error in here. Each child in a list should have a unique key prop. Okay, now this is something to do with a VDOM. It has nothing to do with the application, the code that we are doing it. We have to calm this error, and there's a way we can calm this error. But the reason behind this error is the VDOM, because we are trying to generate the exact same product list. The data doesn't matter. Think about the view. Let's inspect each of them and see. The data doesn't matter. Only think about the div structure. Look at that. Div h1 image. Div h1 image. It's exactly the same, right? Every product card has the exactly same structure. Now, if you go back to this thing in here, if you try to do the same thing over again and again and again and again. Now, if I ask React, hey React, go change the h1 tag from hello to something else, welcome. Now React in the VDOM will go crazy, because it has to try to find which h1 element, but all the h1 elements are exactly the same. The structure is exactly the same, right, folks? The structure is exactly the same.
Yeah.
I cannot go by the index. If I go by the index, what if I delete one of this? If in order to apply the change to this guy, if I try to delete a product, it will start applying the change to this guy, because it always remembered the first index. But I need something unique across each object. So what I do is I go by adding something called key. And this key is unique across all the children of React, generating from each product. Now we go back to our component for products.js and see where we are trying to generate this again and again and again. We are using a for loop in here. So what is unique across all the products?
Index.
I'm sorry?
Index.
Index. Think about again. What is only thing and the things I highlighted? What is the unique thing about each product?
ID.
Exactly, ID, right? So I would go ahead, give a key is equal to, I would give the ID as a key. Now, as soon as I give this, give it a refresh and see what happens on the console log. Boom, the error is gone. We are trying to help the VDOM. This is another interview question. Why do you need a key when you try to generate the items over an array? Because the principle behind the React is that when you try to apply the changes to the real DOM, it uses a VDOM. But since VDOM only relies on the structure of the HTML, not the data, okay? It just relies on the structure of the HTML. Providing a unique key will help the VDOM to locate the view and apply the changes. Guys, as simple as this. You have a courier to deliver, and if you put into a community where there are no numbers, no every building is the same, and I just give you, okay, go deliver the package. Whom would you deliver the package? Just by giving a name, you have to go to each single individual apartment, knock the door, get the person out, ask them if this does your match your name. But if each individual apartment has a unique number to them, and your package has a number to match, it would be a lot easier, right, to deliver the package. Make sense?
Right.
So that is, we are helping the VDOM, and we are also helping ourselves, because if you're not able to give the unique key, you would have a lot of inconsistencies. For example, one of the inconsistencies, I wish I could able to reproduce that, but that is very intermittent. If I do not provide the key, if I add item on the first element, it might sometimes add the second item, because it doesn't know which button that I'm clicking on. It sometimes it might think it's the first, sometimes it thinks the second. It's very intermittent, because there's no unique key across all the views. Okay, that completes the core concepts of React. Now, whatever we're going to discuss going forward would be additional packages that helps us to write a better code. And before jumping on that, there is a few more component life cycles that I want to discuss. That completes the core concepts, but this is the functional part of React, the bare bones of React, where you need all the happy parts, but there are more into React. One of the component life cycles that I want to discuss you right now is a component will receive props. So it fits right inside here. Component will receive props. It's self-explanatory. It's just saying that whenever a component receives a new set of properties, this component lifecycle will be triggered. Okay, as simple as that. Whenever a component receives a new set of properties, this component lifecycle will be triggered. I would add this component lifecycle in. So in our entire application, we have products and a product, right? There's just two components in here for now, and the header. Now, which component do you think will receive new properties every time I say hit the add button? Which component receives new properties when I hit the add button?
Maybe the
I'm sorry? It's the product component, because every time I hit the add button, it goes through another render. So because it receives a new set of properties, but this component lifecycle is only valid inside a class component, because every component lifecycle is only valid inside a class component, right, folks? Yeah. So we can do two things in here. Either I can move all my products, fetching the components, getting all the stuff from the components to app.js, and then send the properties into into the products, and then start generating it. Or there's another location we can do. Products, we can go to products in here. We will try to replace the product from memo component to a regular class-based component. That should still render our function components. And right inside in here, I would say next props, and console.log component will receive props dot next props. And give it a And you can see each time a component receives a new properties, no matter what, if the component properties are changing or not changing, this component lifecycle will be auto triggered. Okay, and what is the use case of this component lifecycle? If your component needs the properties inside a state, for example, I would create a state in here. This dot state is equal to this is just an example. So each product will receive its own set of properties, right? So product details, and each time it receives, I would say, let's say product name, and this dot props dot name. Undefined, am I telling name or product name? Oh, I have to bind this to super. Oops. Oh, let's just add a blank name in here and then give it a refresh and go to inspect. And then this component should have a state and a properties, right folks? This component should have a state. The state is the product name is empty in here and the props, and you guys can see that the keys started showing up on each product. That helps the VDOM. Now what if I need the properties that are coming externally by a component into my component, but I want to store the properties? I cannot change the properties. So the only way I can change the properties is to get the properties, you add them to that particular component state. So this is the product name in here. So what I would do whenever the component will receive props happen, I would do something like this. This dot set state product name is equal to this dot props dot name. Or we can do this. We can just try to understand if the product is added to the cart or not. So that it's an internal state to the product component. So I would say is this product in cart? Okay, which is false. But whenever user clicks, the component receives a new properties, which are new properties or the next properties, and the next properties, it would grab that next properties and then add it to the is in cart. Okay, so let's and you can see is this product state is false, and see what happens when I hit a add button. And the same thing for all the components. So whenever I hit a add button on the whichever the component, only that particular component is updated and it is taking the properties and adding it to state. This is the only use case where you need a component will receive props. It's a bit less used if you're using more stateless components. You would not need this at all. Any component lifecycle definitely you would not need it. But there are scenarios where you would have to update the state of a component based on the properties. Okay, and if you guys remember from the first class, there is another component lifecycle, constructor, render. There's in between there's another component lifecycle, if you guys remember. Do you guys remember? Before constructor and after render, there's another component lifecycle in between. It was component will mount.
Yeah, sorry, will mount.
Yeah, component will mount. Starting from React 16, I think 16 or 16.4, two component life cycles have been completely deprecated, which is component will mount, okay, and component will receive props. If you go to console message, you should always start seeing that component will receive props and component will mount have been deprecated. Currently, they do not have support for component will reach. They do have support, but you would see this console messages. In order to, if you're using an application and you're trying to upgrade from lower versions to higher versions of React, and you still have this component life cycles, the only way you can use them is using by adding something called unsafe flag. Unsafe. If you start using these flags, you would no longer receive that error message. That's all. If the component life cycles have been deprecated, then what is an alternative? They came up with something called get derived state from props. This is a static component lifecycle. What does that mean? It has it takes in the state and the props and it just returns. It cannot do any set state and all that stuff. Get received props is invoked right before calling the render method, which is the component will mount, because the component will mount is called before the render method, is invoked right before calling the render method, both on initial mount and on subsequent updates. What is that subsequent updates component lifecycle? Is a component will receive props. So it is both replaced by one single component, and it cannot do any set state and all that stuff. It should only return an object. It will return an object and that becomes the part of the state. Any questions on this? Guys, any questions on this?
Yeah, it's a bit confusing and bad.